Welcome to Networking with Nathaniel, a real estate related, at least, podcast where I get to chat with entrepreneurs, mainly been real estate investors up until this point, that are doing really cool things. I get to learn from them. Hopefully, you guys learn as well. If you're a returning guest here, if you've been getting value out of this, please like the podcast so we can reach more people. That's how we can grow our community and do more things with each other. If you're new, if this is your first time here, hang out for a little bit, see if it's something that you even enjoy. Then give it a like. My guest today is Adam Dupuis. I was on his podcast a few weeks ago, and it's just timing wise that we've worked till here. He's been in real estate for a little over a year now, I think. Capital raising has been his primary venture. He's also a small business owner and a consultant for some other small businesses. He likes being outside, man. So we definitely share that in common. So without further ado, let me bring Adam up. How you doing, brother?
Doing good, bro. What's going on with you?
Oh man, you know it. I'm sweating over here with my shirt on.
No, Daniel.
Yeah, that's right, man. I had it off before we started recording. He was like, "Oh yeah, no shirt, Nathaniel." I guess that's a good one. I might have to start going with that. Maybe that'll be my new like Instagram tag or something. But yeah, how you doing? What are you kind of working on right now?
Right now, what I'm working on is some partners and I are securing funding for getting an RV park under contract. So my one of my partners is going to the seller today, try to get under contract. I'm working on funding on the backside, and so we are potentially taking down. It's a 36 pad over
Okay,
here in Galliano, Louisiana.
very nice. Yeah, you were telling me before we started here that there's been some what is it? Weather related goings on there by you.
Yeah, we just had Hurricane Francine pass through last week and it made landfall, I believe, Wednesday evening and knocked out power for about 500,000 people in the metro area. So
That's so
yeah,
crazy.
it's been a little bit of an adventure.
Yeah, geez, I that's we live pretty inland, so we do not we do not get those kind of crazy weathers that you guys do. I think Houston had, as we were talking, Houston had gotten hit pretty well too. So that's maybe why you weren't on the podcast last week, is because you didn't have power. I'll give you the excuse on that one. Yeah.
Yep, that's probably why.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned you have some partners here. You have a team. What does that look like? This is not something that we've chatted about before.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I do well, and so I build teams, and I'm really good at picking people and finding out what their strengths and weaknesses are and putting the right people in the right seats and in the right rooms together. So I had a capital raising team and I still work with them sometimes on certain things. I have an integrator team that I still work for. I've got, two partners that we're doing RV parks together. And like I said, it's just finding out where, where we complement each other, right? You never want your partners to be in the same skill sets as you. You want them to be in different skill sets and you want them to even be different personalities to some extent because they're going to challenge you. You don't want somebody that's just going to be your yes man or your
Right.
yes woman. You want somebody that's going to come in and say, no, I think we need to look at it this way. And you're going to say, you know what? I think you're right, Daniel. Like we didn't consider this. Even like with the RV park, we were going through several different exit strategies. Like, do we want to get it? Do we want to wholesale it? Do we want to take it down? Like, do we need to bring in a private money lender? Do we need to bring in a private money partner? Like, what's the best way to go about it? We had a healthy debate about it, and we now have our rankings, right? Like, we're gonna keep it with a private money partner or back up wholesale it.
Okay, so you have two exit strategies. I like to quote that because I don't think that holding is an exit; it's a hold strategy. But we commonly refer to like a long-term rental or co-living, right, as exit strategies, something. But it sounds like you guys got two for it. How did you find this RV park? Yeah, tell me a little bit of details. If I know you can't probably share too much because you haven't closed on it yet, but
Yeah, I mean, the simple solution here is like I'm just in some of the Facebook groups, and I believe that's how I found this one was just going through. You'd be surprised at the on market leads you'll find through Facebook groups. Craigslist's another really good one. Um, we were using we were using Crexy to pull. I
Okay.
think I had pulled like 6 RV park leads. Um, we did some napkin underwrites on them. One of them, the broker was not very cooperative, so we ruled that out. We brought it down to 5. 3 were overpriced. 1 didn't respond, and then we had one that we looked at. We're like, all right, this is a good deal. So we went from the napkin underwrite to the seller, and we said, hey, look, you have it listed for this. We would like to get it for this. She verbally agreed. She's like, hey, we also own the lot next door. So would you like the lot with the other 2 buildings on it? Well, we don't know. We have to walk the property first, but once we walk it, we'll probably end up signing the purchase agreement.
Nice. And these were you mentioned Crexy. Um, I've never. Yeah, we haven't looked at any RV parks up until now. We have used it for some commercial, some multifamily properties that we were looking at. But Crexy is an online marketplace essentially for more the commercial side of things. Is that right?
Yeah, Crexy is obviously not fantastic for a single family. That's not what it's built for, but it is built for pretty much anything commercial. So when you're looking at multifamily, sometimes you can find businesses on there for sale. You can
Okay.
find RV parks, you can find mobile home parks, you can find sometimes even whole portfolios. I had found there was like a 12 RV park portfolio for sale in Georgia and Florida on Crexy. You just never really know what you can find, and I like it a lot primarily because they have an option in the listing for people to list all of the marketing for the property. So like one of the leads that we called, the guy was like, I asked him, I was like, hey, do you mind emailing me the financials? And he was like, oh, did you pull the OM? And I was like, no, like, how would I pull the OM? He's like, oh, you just go into Crexy and you sign a confidentiality agreement. You can download the OM and all the due diligence documents. They're all in there already. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, well, that makes it incredibly easy.
What is for everybody listening? What is an OM?
So the OM is the offering memorandum. Some people also call it a pro forma. Both are more or less the marketing for the property. It's your pitch deck. It's, hey, Nathaniel, I'm selling this property. Usually, like I said, in this case, it's a commercial property. Um, I would, these are all the reasons I think you should buy it. This is what it's doing. This is what it could do. These are the prettiest pictures that I have. And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind with whether they call it an offering memorandum or they call it a pro forma, it's the same thing, and that's marketing. So keep in mind it's not actual, and you have to confirm all the things that they say in there are true.
I Proforma's been used a couple different ways for me now. How are you using it here? Because it sounds like you're describing a document, but I've heard Proforma as um, projected future rents and values.
So a pro forma usually is a document that explains the projected rents and values.
Okay.
That's a lot of times what they'll do is they will include in the pro forma what the property could do, and I always put that in air quotes too, right? Because we don't know what the property could do. We don't own it. We haven't owned it yet. Um, but it's usually what it could do. And one of the best examples I use is I had a friend that was trying to sell his cattle ranch, and he came up with a valuation of his ranch at $115,000. Well, okay, the pro forma is this is what it could do, right? Like there's all these government contracts you could get for owning a cattle ranch, and there's all of there's these potential revenue streams, there's revenue streams that exist now, there's what it and the sometimes it'll even be used to include assets or equipment if it's more of a business sale than a real estate sale.
Okay. Yeah, like tractors and just using on the.
Right. Tractors, heads of cattle, and whatever. But again, and this is true for the real estate side too. when you started digging into the numbers, when you did a little bit of research, when you looked at like the tractors on Facebook Marketplace or the other equipment that was for sale, or even the heads of cattle, and you tried to get like your comps, you know, you wouldn't come anywhere close to 115 grand in valuation.
Mm.
So that's why it's important, like I said, the pro forma always looks good because it's supposed to look good, but it's up to you to do your own proper due diligence and to confirm the numbers based on what we call it data, not drama. Like
Okay.
I want to see that you have a proven track record of the property that you're selling me, and that this is not just what you like I said, what you think it could do. Like, oh, well, we just got good property management in place 6 months ago. Great. But how am I supposed to confirm this? Oh, well, we don't put the cash on the books. Okay, well then your business is at a loss.
Yeah.
And well, you could watch the property for 45 to 60 days and you can see the envelope system and all that. Like, no, that only gives me a snapshot. Like, I want to be able to see the full totality of the performance and income of the property, so that way I can confirm the numbers that you're telling me and I can confirm the valuation.
Yeah. How are you? It sounds like on one hand, this might just be like this is not a deal then in this case, but also on the other hand, you don't want to just pass on something that could be a deal. How are you navigating that without all this information right
Well, more often than not, a lot of people are trying to include too many things in their valuations. And we saw this with the RV parks when we were underwriting the leads. We had a park that was asking 4.3, and we had a park that was asking 6 million. We had a park that was asking 2.2. And those are the three I was telling you when we did the napkin underwrites, they were all overpriced. And they weren't overpriced by a little bit, they were overpriced by a lot. And because based on the numbers that they were giving us, we could see, maybe a valuation of like 300,000 on one, 500,000 on another one, and maybe like 2 million on another one.
now?
And
Oh,
that's
so really
because
off.
they were way, way off,
Yeah.
2.2 to 300,000, 4.3 to 2 million, and then 6 million is probably worth 500,000
Wow.
based on what they've shown us. Because those assets sell on NOI, but they were more or less trying to include all of their revenue streams along with the NOI, along with the land valuation. And that's how they came up with these like astronomical numbers. But it's not worth that. Like, that's not how it sells. It's just like if you were trying to sell your car on Facebook Marketplace and you're trying to sell it on the sentimental value that it has to you, and you're like, well, to me, it's worth 40 grand. And it's like, well, Nathan, that's cool, but you're driving a beater.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
looked at the Kelly Blue Book, right? And based on the condition it's in, it's worth 5. And
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, but it's worth more than that to me. Okay, well, it's great, but we don't have a deal.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're going. Hey, you could rent this thing out on Turo and make $20,000 a year. Yeah, that's not what we're doing here. Yeah.
Well, and actually, that's a good example to run with. You're trying to sell me your car, and it's a beater, and you're telling me, okay, you can rent this out on Turo. Well, Nathan, that's fine, but it's too old to even rent on Turo.
Yeah.
Like, so you're giving me a pro forma or a projected value, and like Lance said in the comments a little while ago, he said this is the current value and the projected value. So you're kind of trying to say, this is what it's doing, this is what I think it could do based on like appraisals and you know kind of the zoning and what's going on in the area. But again, if you're trying to sell me a 2008, 2000 to 2011 car, and you're like, yeah, it could make this much money on Toro, well, and it can make this much money on Uber. I'm going to go look, and I'm going to see that both their requirements
Mm.
don't allow it to be more than 10 years old,
Yeah.
and
Interesting.
they have mileage restrictions too. So therefore, you're trying to sell me a car on the marketing, and the car doesn't even fit the revenue streams that you're saying that you're including in your projections.
Yeah. So I with single family house, even with multifamily to a certain extent, I understand how you're looking at the value of it, right? You're able to go, this is what a apartment would rent for, this is what the house would rent for, and so I can kind of project things out from there. With an RV park, how are you going about that? Is there a Zillow for RV parks, for example? Like, what does that look like?
Not necessarily. A lot of times you do have to look at comps, and when you're looking at comps, you have to look at similar markets. And so sometimes that can be hundreds of miles away.
Mm,
You usually want to look at rents in the areas. You want to find, like, if you're going to do comps, you're probably going to do comps sometimes even in other states. So you just want to find a market that's most similar to yours, right? Like, since we're in Galliano, Louisiana, for this park, we're not looking at parks in, say, like Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Those are going to rent for way more than they would in a fishing town like Galliano, because Galliano has, it solves a different problem. It solves the problem of like affordability. It's not really touristy. Like, people do go down that way for fishing, but they're not, like, because we're solving two different problems. If you're trying to do comps, it would be like if I was trying to look at, your co-living property versus the short-term rental. They're not the same.
mm, okay.
So, yeah, there's not really like a Zillow per se. You just have to do your comps and your underwriting to the best of your ability. And you have to kind of look at the market rates in that area and see what they're going for. And once you have the market rates, that'll help you also establish better comps.
Okay. And with when you're like looking, you're finding a market or a city that is similar to the one that you're looking at the property on. And then are you also looking at like, yeah, I don't know the RV terms, but um, the type of hookups that there are, what other things are around it as far like you mentioned fishing, but like is there a Walmart close? Like do those things play in?
Yeah, everything plays in. It's just like looking at multifamily. It's just that the terms are different, because NOI is different, the expenses are different. So for us, what we're looking at, like you said, is it septic or is it city sewer water? City sewer water is always preferred. Is it gravel or is it concrete? Because that matters a lot, especially where we are, because the ground settles. All the marshland, concrete's more likely to crack. You'd have to dig it up. You have to pour new concrete every 5 to 10 years, as opposed to just kind of either importing in or regrading gravel like once or twice a month.
Yeah.
And all that goes into like how much does it cost you to develop pads? Because again, if you're pouring concrete, it's going to be more expensive. You might be able to quote 5 grand per pad between the utilities and the gravel, but if you have to pour the concrete, is it how much does that go up? So we're looking at stuff like that. We're looking at, like you said, what's around it. For us, in this one in particular, there's not a whole lot around it. It is one of those highways that goes all the way down to the coast, so you catch a lot of through traffic. There's a hospital probably about a mile and a half away,
Okay.
and the current owners have FEMA contracts in place. So that's one of the other things that we're looking at is they ran very, very low vacancy because they had those FEMA contracts.
So you're looking at how you can keep those in place after you take ownership of it, if you take ownership of it.
Yeah, exactly. Because coastal Louisiana is always getting wrecked by hurricanes. So 2021 was the last major hurricane that we had come through. And so for the LLR, when we looked at it, the 2022, they had 12 of the 36 spots were taken by FEMA. For 2023, it was four.
Okay. And then, yeah, it seems like, does that mean that they're basically always rented out? They're always being paid for because they're like reserving those spots just in case.
It does. It means that they're running very low vacancy. Their high vacancy months were like 8 to 11%.
Okay.
And it also means that because they're running so few pads, we have tons and tons of room to develop more pads. And Shana, the LLR is kind of like the long-term rents. It's similar to a T12. They sent us that. It had the income per month per spot, what they were renting for, and then underneath that they had also included their expenses. So we got to see what the gross was. We got to see what the expenses were. We got to see the difference between 2022 and 2023. 22 had more expenses in it. There was more capex, probably because of the hurricane. I'm sure there were certain things they had to fix, but they also had more income, probably because they were able to charge FEMA a little bit more than they would charge individuals. So we look at all that, and like the fact that this one sits only 23 acres, I know roughly how many pads you can fit in 23 acres. So we know that there's significant value add potential there as well.
Yeah, 23 acres seems like what is it like? We have a couple other questions in the chat. I'm going to pop up here too, but I want to touch on a couple things before we move on. Uh, is how many pads do you typically get in an acre?
It depends. The way that they developed this park is real similar to other parks. They have like an oval shape in the front, and that oval allows them to back the campers in really easily. And on the outskirts of the oval, they can fit about 16 pads, and then in the middle, they can fit about 4 pull-through pads.
Okay.
So I guess it would depend on if you can fit more than one of those ovals side by side. But of the overpriced parks that we looked at, 2 of them were on 23 acres, and both of them had several between 4 to 7 acres left to develop, and they were running about 104 pads on one and 121 pads on the other. And that was still with, like I said, 4 to 7 acres left to develop.
Yeah. So what is that like? 5 per acre, something like that. 5 to 7 per acre. Yeah. That's my jumble math. You mentioned T12 with what was the LLR? What did that stand for?
It's kind of like their long-term rents. It's
Okay.
their it was we had asked them for T12s, and they sent a document over called the LLR. And so, I guess for them that was y- keep in mind that RV parks are not institutionalized for the most part. The industry's only 18% institutionalized, so 82% of it is mom and pops.
Okay.
So a lot of the financials you get are going to be kind of jumbled. Some of it's going to be back of the napkin math. A lot of cash is going to be off the books,
Mm,
and a lot of documents are not going to be titled the same as what you would traditionally see in the multifamily space. So, like I said, when we asked for like income and expenses, they were like, "Well, here's the LLR." I was like, and I had asked them the same thing. I was like, "What's an LLR?" And they're like, "It's income and expenses." And I was like, "All right, well, I mean, that's all that matters, right?
yeah, yeah. Well,
As long
that's
as we
essentially
have,
what the T12. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, as long as we have that and we can verify that everything they said in there is true. And like, of course, it brings up a couple of questions here and there. We were like, "Well, why are some of these months discounted? Why are some of them higher? Like,
Mm,
are these 4 spots still under contract by FEMA? Like, when does that contract renew? Well, it renews annually, and I think it's coming up in January or something like that. It's just another document, like I said, that gives you the performance of the property and the data that you need that you then have to go out and confirm.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the thing about the mom and pop because Lance a few minutes ago had brought that up. Um, that they're doing stuff off the books and not necessarily the most organized. The T12
Never.
is a trailing 12 months, right? You can do
Hmm.
T6, you can do T24 if you wanted, right? That's just T12 is usually the norm.
Yeah, you usually see it divided up by quarters, but more often than not, people will ask for 2 to 3 years of T12s.
Okay. Yeah, so it's the like a real good breakdown of all the income and expenses of the property per month for the past 12 months. So essentially, it
Yeah.
sounds like the same thing as the people. I wanted to touch that, Shannon, just in case you were out there listening, questioning that. Lance brought up a question about the higher insurance rates, and I don't have an answer for that because I don't.
I mean, the simple answer is, at least for the RV parks, that their insurance rates are not that bad.
Uh-huh.
And it's mainly because we don't own the properties. Like this park in particular has 2 buildings on the neighboring lot, which we would look to acquire as well. That's part of the purchase agreement that we're negotiating right now. So those buildings would have to be insured. There's 4 cabins, but 32 of the spots are just gravel pads. So the insurance rates, I remember looking at them, and like I said, they weren't terrible. They didn't cut into the NOI nearly as much as you would think they would. The expenses were roughly about 30% annually, and that includes the insurance.
Oh wow, okay. It seems like because, like you said, you don't actually own the physical, like you don't own the oh geez, you don't own the house, right? It's not the house, but it's the
Right.
recreational vehicle, right? The person has their own insurance on it. What is insurance going to cover for an RV park? Is that like liability stuff in case somebody gets hurt. Um,
Yeah, it's likely going to cover the liability and probably some form of the property, right? Like there you do have certain things on the property. Like I said, we have four cabins. There's two metal buildings. There's the signage, like the lights. Like there's little weird things, infrastructure things even that may or may not be covered by insurance. I know this one's on septic. Um, so again, maybe that's something to do with it. It just depends. Every property is different, every insurance policy is different, but
yeah.
at least I was kind of surprised by that because we thought that too. Like it's more coastal than I am. Galliano's about an hour south of where I'm at, which is in Kenner, Louisiana, right by the New Orleans airport.
Okay.
So we figured it being coastal and outside levee protection, it was going to be a lot higher. But that's also what we like about the asset class is the further south you go, the more RV parks they have. And the reason for that is being outside levee protection. Like if Nathaniel's staying in the park and there's a hurricane coming, I just go knock on his door and I'm like, hey, bro, time to go. Like I'll
You're
hold the
there.
spot for you. You can come back in a week or two, but like you got a GTFO and
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
Yeah. That's funny. I just sidebar, like I saw a person on the street a couple days ago that they had their house. They were just towing it behind them, like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, oh, the hurricane's coming. Okay, okay. It wasn't an RV. It was a house, and it was a
Yeah, it
like
was
F
probably a tiny
six
home.
fifty or something. Yeah, it was a big old truck. So what is it sounds like you're doing underwriting, it sounds like you're doing like insurance coding. What is your real role in this one, and how does that play into what you're doing um, for the bigger scheme of things?
So my main role is securing the capital and doing the operations, which ties directly into what my strongest skill sets are, which is negotiating with the lenders and it's also handling operations. Because as you mentioned when we before we kicked this off, I raise capital for some people and I also am doing operations consulting for my friend with her own small business. So those are the two things that I do the most. Now I didn't underwrite the park myself. Like I sat down with somebody who's much more skilled than I am and we did a napkin underwrite together. And then I sat down with my two partners and we underwrote it some more. And then they did the calling of the seller and they did negotiations and they're doing more of the acquisitions, the sales, the marketing, those kinds of things. Whereas,
Okay.
like I said, I prefer to do more of the back end stuff because that's where I shine at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you have good conversations with people, find out what their you know best traits are, their best characteristics, and you put them into the role that best fits their needs and their style. That's what it sounds like, at least. Yeah.
Well, Tyler did something really smart. He went to ChatGPT and he asked it. He was like, "Hey, can you come up with an assessment with all the roles and responsibilities of RV parks?" And then he printed out. He came up with an assessment. He sent it to us, and it told us there's like four or five main areas. Rate on a scale from 1 to 5 what the primary areas you want to focus are in. And so I put raising capital and I put operations as my top one and then my top two. But sales and marketing, I ranked very low, and acquisitions, I ranked very low because I didn't want to do anything with them. And
Yeah,
I
that's
think underwriting was the other one, and I ranked that one somewhere in the middle because, like, I understand a little bit of underwriting, but I'm not qualified, frankly, to underwrite well.
mm. Yeah. You made it like a little bit of a personality test, kind of, so to speak. Oh, hi, kitty cat. Oh, wait, never mind. That's a dog.
Yeah,
I just saw the back. I
that's a
just saw like the back. um, where? Oh
yeah.
shoot! I had a question. I got distracted by the fur ball. Uh,
Yeah, he made it a personality, more or less like a skills assessment. I think would
yeah,
be the best way to describe it, right? And that's the beauty of having stuff like AI now is he was able to go in there with a quick, simple prompt, spit one out. We all we've pretty much found out we were all complimentary. Surprise, right? Like because the two of them, they don't want to like operate the park. They don't want to move over there. And I'm like, well, I'm actually open to relocating. So maybe I will go live at the park for a period of time for 12 months, 24 months until we get the new pads developed and we get the income up. And then we just reallocate that property management budget instead of paying me a salary, pay it to somebody else, so I don't have to do it.
Hmm. I hear part of the acquisition cost of this is a nice RV for Adam. That's a
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, bougie one, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, bougie one. Oh, I did. The question came back to me. The you mentioned that you are like an operations consultant for another business. Is that a real
Mhm.
estate business or is that something different?
It's actually a business coaching business
Oh,
of all the
interesting.
things.
Okay. And that's like
So,
the integrator side of you, it sounds like.
yeah, that's the integrator side. I'm nearly equal skilled in visionary and integrator, so I'm able to kind of really take what the visionary is saying and put it into perspective and also challenge the visionary on like what they need to be thinking about or what they need to be doing.
Okay.
And so for her, she just kind of, I think she needed somebody to show her where her operational inefficiencies were. She really does believe in teaching other small business owners not only more about their potential, but like their God-given potential.
Mm,
And so I've been working closely with her since June.
okay. And has anything that you've done, learned there translated? And if so, or translated to what you're doing in real estate? If so, what was that? How did it kind of look like?
Oh yeah, I think small business is way harder than real estate in general.
Hmm.
That's kind of my big controversial opinion because real estate is like so simplified by comparison. You don't really need like yeah, you have a CRM and you have but you don't have to like go find like product market fit. You have a product and it is a very high ticket, but you don't have to find, your avatar and your client base and you don't have to go really knock doors in the same way to try to get into and break into different markets. So I would say, I think the things that you learn in one or the other translates really, really well to both sides. Like you can take a lot of lessons from real estate, like raising capital and working with lenders and just building those relationships in general. And you can take that back into the small business side, but also likewise, you know, what I see in her business is not that dissimilar than what I see in other people's real estate businesses, which is people just kind of everybody's running around. They build these really big, kind of bloated teams, and then they have super long SOPs where they end up eating up a lot of labor costs, and their businesses end up running kind of bloated. So that's what we've been doing is alleviating the pressure, eliminating processes that don't make sense, getting rid of softwares that she's paying for that she's not using, going to softwares that are simpler and easier to use. Like we put her on a project management software so she can really kind of see and get more levels of transparency because she runs a fully remote team.
Okay.
Nobody's in person. She's in Kentucky. Her executive assistant's in Arkansas. I'm in New Orleans. She's got somebody in California, like somebody in the Virgin Islands. It's
Oh,
her whole team is scattered.
yeah. It sounds a lot very similar to what Jesse was talking about last week. I forget what book he had read it in, but it was a story about Elon Musk walking through one of his facilities and go delete, 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 getting rid of certain things that were over complicated and unnecessary, and just simplifying everything down. And then he even mentioned like he takes it to a point where, oh, I've deleted too much. Now adding back 10%, 15%. So you get back to that place where it's like you're streamlined, your processes are simple and easy to understand. When it's time to bring somebody new in or bring a new system in, like it's an easy addition. It's not this complicated thing, right? We go out and we hire 15 VAs and a bunch of different things. And now, like, oh, scrambling to get all the systems and processes in place and handle how do you manage all those different aspects, those different personalities, those different people. And just slowly build those things over time and keep things super simple. Like the in the Marine Corps we had keep it simple, stupid, KISS.
Well,
Like what?
Elon had done it with the Twitter acquisition. He went in there and
Right.
fired like 80% of the staff, and Twitter didn't run any different day to
Yeah.
day. He just saved 80% of his labor costs
Yeah.
instead. Like it's hard because you care about those people, but organizations that are that big, like Google and Amazon, they can afford to have people on staff that do literally nothing, and they have no idea because their organizations are so big and they bring in so much money, they can't keep track of each individual employee at the same rate. But like you and I are small businesses,
Right.
so we can't afford the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of the I get most of my healthcare through the VA, and like the VA system is just this big bloated. It's government too, so it has that issue as well. But so many times I go to a VA facility and it's just like there's three people sitting behind the desk doing nothing. Like what the heck is going on here? But I'll get off
On
that
her
subject.
too, she retired from the federal government. She worked
Yeah.
for a law enforcement agency. I won't say which, but and I told her that outright. I said, "You're trying to run your business like a bureaucracy." And I said, "You have all these support roles." I said, you don't have anybody that's actually generating revenue." I was like, "You need to hire a sales team. You need to hire more people for marketing.
Yeah.
You can't have just all of this, all this unnecessary, like the SOPs and the KPIs. What are you tracking?"
Mm. Yeah, that's something that I'm not personally good at. That's why Brittany is such a good compliment to me. Lance did ask a question. I believe it's related to the RV park. If it's not, he can say, "Hey, what the heck?" in the comments there. But is this something that you're open to talking about here? If you're
So,
still
are
looking
you
for a
bringing in a
project,
PML or a PMP?
yeah.
Yeah, so I have a conversation with somebody later today, and she's probably going to come in, I'm thinking, as a private money partner.
Okay.
So if she decides to not go that route, then yes, we may be open to having more conversations about that. But ideally, we're going to probably bring somebody in that's more bankable, that has the liquidity and the down payment to help us get the bridge loan to secure the park and also secure the rehab budget that we need to develop the additional pads. We're trying to take it from 36 to 75 pads because
Okay.
KOA had already approached the previous owners about developing it into a KOA campground, but the minimum amount of pads that required for a KOA would be 75. And we've run the numbers, we figured out what the rehab budget is, we figured out, how much it can generate and what we would need to get it there. So yeah, I have a conversation with her actually probably about 35 to 45 minutes after this podcast.
Oh,
And
nice.
we'll see where it goes. But
Okay.
that's the big thing about raising capital is you got to be, like, as ironic as it sounds, people think you get into raising capital because you're not bankable and therefore you don't need to be bankable. But it's like the more bankable you are and the better, like, you have, if you have good credit history and you don't have a whole bunch of derogatory marks and you have a good income, like all the same things that make it easier for you to do things traditionally, having experience even, it
Mhm.
makes it way easier for you to raise the capital too. It's the same qualifications. You just go through less stringent qualifications to raise the capital.
Yeah. I want to get to that now. I want to kind of segue to that, but you've thrown a bunch of acronyms out. KOA, what's KOA?
KOA is Campgrounds of America. They are the largest
Uh,
franchise model in the US and in Canada. So they have, if you wanted to start a KOA campground, you could either buy a KOA already existing or you could sell a campground to KOA. You can also turn your campground into a KOA campground. It's like a $40,000 application fee that gets you like the consulting, the park design, and it also gets you training at what they call KOAU, which is their training program. You would go up to Billings, you would go through their 2 or 3 week intensive, you get their software, which is their K2 is their camp management software. You would get that, you would get their marketing, you would get their bookings, and and it's all that for a small percentage of like annual profit share,
okay, yeah,
more or
the
less.
franchise fee, and then interesting. I
Yeah.
figured, like, based on what you had said, I kind of figured it was something along those lines, but I was like, yeah, let me ask. Maybe somebody out there's listening that is confused too. With the capital raising, so you've been doing this for a year now, the capital raising part? I
Going
forget
on a
exactly.
year. It's since about January.
What has been your primary source for connecting with these people that are interested in either being a PML or a PNP?
Mostly by just building friendships, like going into the other REI groups that you and I are both in, all the same places you see me market like my podcast is a lot of places where I go talk to people that are looking to either deploy capital or raise capital. So, you and I met through Sub 2, and we have a lot of mutual friends in Sub 2, but JJ's group, the Growth Co., REI Volt, really anywhere that, a lot of people that you and I are already friends with, they all hang out at. I'm always going in there and just doing what people say to do. Like when Pace is like, "Hey, like we're gonna do a networking challenge tonight on family night. Let's see how many phone numbers you can get." I take him seriously, and then every
Yeah,
time he does one of those, I come out of it with another 20 some odd phone numbers. That's about what I average is like 20 to 22 phone numbers every time Pace does a 3 hour Zoom where he's like, network with as many people as you can. I
yeah,
went to Squad Up Summit. I got probably 100 phone numbers from Squad Up Summit, like in person. Um, And so a lot of it's just asking people. I might even ask you one day. I might be like, "Hey, Nathaniel, are you looking to deploy?" And you'll be like, "No, I'm fully deployed." Okay, cool. Well, do you know anybody that's looking to be a PML or a PMP?
yeah,
And you might say, "Yeah, I've got somebody that was just asking me, and I don't have a deal for him." So, okay, well, now we have a place that we can put that money and we can make it work for that potential person. But you have to know, like, and trust me enough to even give me that referral into somebody that's in your network that's not already in mine.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. This is something that this is going back a little while now. Lance was on the podcast 30 episodes ago, something like that. Um, if you remember Lance, you let me know. I could pull it up. I could find it. But he was mentioning almost exactly the same thing as you did, going into Zooms and providing value in the comments as as Pace or whoever's talking, giving input, giving value to people. Somebody asks a question, respond to their question. Now your name is being seen in the chat, and people want to do business with you. They want to talk with you. And so then you're going and you're connecting with these people outside of this chat, right? Hey, let's exchange info. Let's get on each other's calendars. Let's have a conversation. At this point, right, you know me, so you're a little bit more comfortable asking, hey, do you have any capital that you're willing to deploy? Is that how you would approach this first conversation? Or if not, how would you?
Not necessarily. So I'll start with this. One, start building a brand, whether it's just in the groups or it's on your personal social media timelines, feeds, whatever. Start building a brand. That was one thing I did inside of Sub 2 really well and really quickly was I started like making posts frequently and people got to know who I was. They got to know that I was a capital raiser. They got to know that I was an integrator. They got to know that I was in small business. So therefore they began to know, like, and trust me. And people would tell me, especially the way that Facebook's algorithm is designed, I might only make a post or two a week, but they'd be like, "Bro, you're all I see. Like, it looks like you just made 6 posts." And it's like, "No, I didn't. You just interact with me enough
Yeah,
that my stuff pops up frequently." But it's the same thing, like with raising capital. Like, I might not come right out the gate to you and just text you, like, "Yep, networking with intention." That's one thing that I try to teach people a lot.
yeah,
And so it's like, I don't come right out the gate. I might not just text you, be like, "Hey, Nathaniel, you thinking about deploying money right now into a deal?" Like, that's impersonal and that's stupid. That's just as bad as, in my opinion, as cold pitching people in the DMs. But if, I have a call with you already scheduled, or if even if I'm just thinking about you, I'll text you something like that. Be like, "Hey, bro, just thinking about you. What you up to? Where you been up to? Where you been? How's things going? How's the wife? How's the kids?" You know,
yeah,
like Shane is saying, to build those relationships, whether you're hosting a podcast or you're just being intentional with people one on one. I always try to text people when they come top of mind
hmm,
and or call them, just depending on the relationship you have with the person. Some people do want to be more direct. And so I would think it's knowing that person. Like, some people have very, very long response windows because they're just busy. You find that a lot, especially with accredited investors. So sometimes they do want you to just come straight to them and be like, "Hey, I've got I got a property I think you'd be interested in. Are you looking for equity or are you looking for interest right now?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then you can then you can go after it that way. You can just be more direct. Like there are one or two people that I do that with. Like, hey, you told me you were looking for equity and co-livings a few months ago. Like, I got some. Um, and they might tell you like, no, I'm fully deployed right now. Okay, no big deal. But they'll
Yeah.
tell you keep bringing them. So guess what? I keep bringing them.
Yeah, that's something that I'm doing a Zoom tonight talking about private money partnerships, and one of the things that I will be mentioning in there is knowing how device wise, email, text, phone call, like you mentioned, somebody wants to be communicated, how often they want to be communicated with, and like you're saying, how to actually communicate with them. Are they just an analytical person? They just want to see numbers, or do they need a little bit of, I don't know, rubbing the back kind of per
Yeah, a
se?
little bit of massaging.
Yeah, a little massaging. Like they want more of a relationship, like where you're gonna get to know each other a little bit more. Like you said, some people they're really busy, they just want to see the numbers. If you start asking them how their day's going and how the weather is, it turns them off. They're not interested in that. They're a red seller in that sense, right? They want to be very direct with you. So I
So
love
I
that you.
usually start with the relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Like because I had this happen with one of my PMPs a couple weeks ago. I texted her. I was like, "Hey, what's going on? What you been up to?" And it took her like 3 days, and she texted me back. She's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I texted her, and then didn't hear from her for several days. And then I was like, "All right, cool. Maybe I just need to be more direct." But I
Hmm.
usually start with trying to, not be um, too blunt. And so then I told her, I was like, "Hey, look, are you still deployed?" And she was like, "Deployed?" And I was like, "Yeah. Are you able to lend?" I said, "You and I had spoken previously about equity deals. I have two of them right now, actually." And she was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still fully deployed. All my money's out. It's not coming back for 3 or 4 months." Okay, cool. Well, I'll let you know if I get one that
Yeah.
I think would fit your bill.
Sounds like she didn't have you saved in as a contact.
She did. She addressed me by name, but yeah, but again, like people are very busy. And so a
Right.
lot of times they might just pick up their phone and respond really quickly. But I usually start with a text. That's the most non-intrusive, direct way to get in touch with people. And then if that doesn't work, sometimes Facebook message is just as good as text because a lot of times I will deliver the notification. I don't like calling people and I don't like sending emails. Emails get buried and
Hmm.
calls get ignored. So
Yeah.
I usually will send the text and I'll talk to them and be like, "Hey, Nathaniel, I'm really thinking about, you. I know you said you really like co-livings. I got this co-living that needs a private money partner. Um, you know, do you have this much to deploy, or are you deploying it all right now?" And if you say, "Yeah, I'm deploying. I've got 70 grand to deploy," I'm going to say, "Okay, cool. I have a property that fits that. Is it okay if I send you an email?" And you're like, "Yeah, sure. Send it to this email." And then I send it to you. And I'm I'm going to I'm going to follow up with you one way or another, right? Like I'll give you a day or two
Hmm.
to come back. And then if I don't hear from you, then I'll just text you, be like, "Hey, did you have a chance to look at it?"
Yeah, it's funny that when at least when I was doing direct to seller marketing, right? They say the money's in the follow up. It's the same with capital raising as well, right? There's things that come up. Yeah, I saw that you emailed, but I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. And just by you texting them, they go, "Oh shoot, I need to check that," right? And then they go check it. So
Yeah,
you got to
shameless
stay
that
on top
it
of it.
depends on who it is.
Hmm.
But I think no matter what, you have to talk to people. It's just a matter of who do you like to talk to the most. Do you like to talk to sellers? Do you like to talk to buyers? Do you like to talk to lenders? I like to talk to lenders because they're typically the most direct people and they usually are more analytical. So, yes, while there is some small talk, there is some relationship building in there. More often than not, it's not nearly the same level of rapport that you have to build with buyers and sellers. so I can be a lot more direct, which allows me to be more authentic to who I am because I'm just naturally pretty blunt in the first place.
Mm. Yeah, I like that you've mentioned this a couple times, like finding out you do a good job of finding out the characteristics and the traits of other people and putting them in the right spot. It's also about putting you in the right spot as well. You just mentioned like I'm a pretty direct person. I don't want to be sugarcoating things. I just want to be talking direct with people. So that helps. I'm sure that helps you during the day, keeping your energy levels up. Right? If you're going and doing things that aren't genuine to yourself, then it's going to drain you real fast. You're as soon as you hit a roadblock, you're just going to be like, nah, this isn't for me, right? You're not going to stick with it.
Yeah, I don't want to sit there on the phone and, tell the seller about how pretty I think their house is and what we think we can get for it. And, or the same thing with the buyer. Like, this house is gorgeous. It fits your buy box perfectly. It's in the right area. It's in a neighborhood. Like, I don't care about all that. I'm like, look, this is the purchase price. This is the rehab. This is the interest rate. This is what we're looking for. This is the terms. Are they willing to do this versus that? Yes. Like
Yeah.
they can do 9 months instead of 12 months. They can do, or would you be willing to go to 18 months or would you be willing to do 12 months with like a 6 month option to extend? Like, you know, do you want equity? Do you not want equity? Do you just want a straight lend? Like, what interest rates work for you? Like, it's just that constant kind of going back and forth and being able to say, like, okay, well, if this isn't a deal for you, what makes this a deal for you?
I love that. Yeah, it's you're able to be creative on multiple aspects of the deal, right? The lending kind of being the one of the final ones is like we can work this however it works for both parties and make it a win-win for both of us. That's again something I'll talk about tonight on the Zoom. I want to ask you a couple questions. I like to ask all the guests here on Networking with Nathaniel. We have kind of touched on a couple here that I have some ideas on what your answers are going to be, but we'll see what actually comes of it. Do you have like three books, podcasts, documentaries, things that have touched you, things that have changed your perspective on how you do business, how you do life, or just something that Adam is cigar aficionado lately? Yeah, I just made one up.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the business knowledge I picked up, I learned from Andy Frisella and his podcast from way back in the day, doing MFCEO project, now Real AF, and MFCEO is coming back. So I always try to give him a shout out wherever I can.
What was the
But
name again?
Andy Frisella, if you just go to any major podcast platforms and you search his name, it'll come up. All of the previous MFCEO project episodes are in the same feed as the Real AF episodes. So there's over 1,000 episodes in there for you to listen to and get your business knowledge from. That's I've listened to all of them, so some multiple times.
Okay.
As far as like three books, The Millionaire Fast Lane was the first one I read this year that really changed. That's DeMarco. I'm trying to remember his first name, but he wrote a really good. That's a really good book. The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Patrick Lencioni is a really really good book. I just finished that one a couple weeks ago, and I'm currently on Buy Then Build by Walker Diebel, and that's a really good book, especially if you're considering business acquisition.
Okay. Buy then build.
Yes, Buy Then Build.
And the second one was five dysfunctions of a team.
The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I just want to make I heard it right. That's what I wrote down, but I appreciate that. um, those are three that have not been mentioned on the podcast before. So congrats to you for coming up with three brand new ones.
Always got to be original.
Yeah, I love it, dude. I have another question that I like to ask, and this one's a little bit deeper. We did um, talk about this prior to going live, but once your time on this earth is done, wherever you go to heaven or whatever you believe in, what do you want to be remembered for from the people that you left behind here on this earth?
I think primarily just being, overall, just being a good dude, being a good steward, being somebody that was responsible and helpful. And, I mean, I've been confronted with that question several times from major car accidents and whatever. And I would say, like I said, the main thing I just want everybody to know is that I cared and that I did everything I could that was in my power up until the point that I left to make people's lives better.
I love that, man. I think that in the communities that we're in, that is an overarching theme, right? Being a giver and trying to help uplift everybody around us. I appreciate you being here, brother. I'm gonna boot you here in a second, but before I do, if there's anybody out there that wanted to connect with you, you've got your phone number displayed there. Is that your preferred? Shoot Adam a text. He likes texting people.
Yeah, people can text me. They can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. I check all of them pretty frequently, probably YouTube the least, but you have my name in here so people can find me on Facebook and Instagram. It's the same picture, so to make it easier for you to find me and identify me. And like I said, you can shoot me a message or shoot me a text, and I'm always here to answer questions. Whatever I can do to help or give value, I will.
I love that, man. What's your you? I know you do your podcasts live. I forget. Is it 6 o'clock?
Sundays from 4 to 6 p.m. If you find me on Facebook or Instagram, you can get the Zoom link there. And if not, if you find me on YouTube, guess what? All of the recordings are on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I was on 3 episodes ago, so it's definitely worth going back and checking that one out. You'll get to hear the conversation from the other side going, which is always fun. Adam, anything you want to leave the audience with before I boot you out of here?
I mean, I think just that everybody should be the go-giver that, you and I are aspiring to be. Like I said, I don't have kids or a wife right now, but I just want everybody to know that, like I said, I did the best I could to make people's lives better and give them a couple of laughs.
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate you, bro. Hang tight.
Sure.
That was Adam Dupuis, as you heard there at the end. He's an amazing individual. He's at the beginning stages of his real estate journey, but he's done a lot in a short amount of time. So he's definitely somebody to keep your eye out on and follow along with. If you're still listening here and you haven't yet, what the heck? There's two thumbs. Thumbs up this thing so we can get some more people listening to it. If you are not already subscribed, subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when we go live. There's a lot of content on the channel. Otherwise, I am going to say Rex Shippey will be on next week with us live Wednesday at noon Eastern time. Until then, it was a pleasure. There you go.